All right, welcome to the casting couch. Sinister Cinema, and we've got Dario Argento's Dracula here. Now, I just want to tell Joe, who recommended this off my Patreon, that Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves and Anthony Hopkins, Winona Ryder, they all made a Dracula movie with Francis Ford Coppola. It's called Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's pretty fucking great, and I just got the 4K, and I would have loved to have watched that just because I literally just got it like a week or two ago, and I was like really excited to see it. So when I saw your request was for Dracula, I was like, oh, cool, and it was Dracula 3D, and I was like, are you sure you put the right one? Because this movie, I'd never seen it before, but this has a horrendous reputation. Now I do own this. I have the Blu-ray. I'd have it right here, but I'm not at home. But I have that 3D Blu-ray and everything. Of course, I didn't watch this in 3D, nor do I see any point for this to have been in 3D. Like, you know, you watch Friday the 13th 3 and, you know, all these Jaws 3 and Amityville or fucking whatever. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, I can see where the scenes were going to be 3D. Outside of the tits in this movie, and there's a couple pairs in here that are incredible. Asha Argento, his daughter, who he seems to only be able to film naked, which I don't know. It's an Italian thing, I guess. But my God, I mean, she's phenomenal. She still looks phenomenal in this. This film's like 8 years old now, so I don't know how old she is in this, but she's got to be in her 40s, and her tits are still fantastic. So are these other girls. Blonde girl that's in this. She's on the cover, too, to try to sell the movie. She's got, like, the big cleavage and everything. And, man, she bears all a few times, and they are fucking just perfection, unbelievable. So I'm looking at those things like, I guess that's the 3D, the 3 double D. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, as I said, I'd never seen this one before. And when he requested it, I was like, you know what? Okay, fine. It's time for me to finally sit down and check out Dario Argento's Dracula. Now, I think that this is a movie that had to have been a passion project of his because there's a lot of old school novels that they just keep trying to revitalize every so often. Like every 5 or 10 years, you'll get a new iteration of like The Three Musketeers or Robin Hood or something. Like these old novels, these well-known characters, always try to revamp them. And typically no one gives a shit. Dracula's a little bit different because Dracula's been done more than anything. In fact, if you look it up, he's been in the most films ever. Like that character, Dracula's been portrayed in more film than any other character in history. So this is definitely not a character that needs any more exploration. And with this story, I mean, it's just there's a little bit of differences in this and that because you got the Jonathan Harker character in here who plays a very minor role, almost non-existent. I'm like, okay, I guess this character has some kind of purpose in this. What it is, I can't figure it out because he's kind of in it. He goes to Dracula's castle, you know, the bit, and then, you know, he kind of disappears for most of the movie, and then when they find him, he's a vampire and they kill him, and it's like 2 seconds, and you're like, okay, cool, that's your Jonathan Harker, awesome, whatever. Moving on from that. But man, this movie, it has like a 3.5 on IMDb or something, and I feel like that might be, I think that's only because this is Argento. And people might take that in one way and think like they're being hard on him, so maybe, you know, it's lower because people's expectations were higher. No, I feel the exact opposite. I feel like this should be lower and people give him a pass because it's Argento. This is terrible. This is a terrible movie. This is really, really fucking bad in so many ways. The way that this looks, like the Blu-ray is clean, so it looks really like nice as far as like the clarity of characters in this and that. So it looks very human, like a person standing right in front of you in that way. But the film still feels cheap as fuck. Even if the quality is high on the resolution, it's the way that it's filmed. There's no fucking flavor to this. There's no aesthetically pleasing shots that would typically go with Argento. This always begs that question of like, what happens to directors in their older ages? Some can still make fantastic films, Martin Scorsese or something. But a lot of directors, and supposedly that's why Quentin Tarantino doesn't want to make any movies after 10. I call bullshit. I think he still will. I hope I'm right. But he just doesn't want to ever have that career where, you know, you watch Carpenter go from The Thing and Halloween and Escape from New York to Ghost of Mars and The Ward, and where you're just like, what the fuck? How do you make these many good movies? Because it's one thing if you're like a one-hit wonder. Like if you just make a fantastic film once and then like everything from there shit. There's directors that do that. But if you're making like hit after hit after hit, masterpiece after masterpiece, I always wonder how they fall so far from grace. And I have to believe that a couple factors are at play. I think eventually your creative juices just run out. You've kind of explored everything, this and that. Number two, I think your name gets the best of you. Whether that's expectations or no one on the set wanting to question Dario Argento, John Carpenter, whatever director was amazing and clearly has had a steep decline. Or I don't know. I don't know what the variable is here. And then of course it's not going to be the same for everybody. But I mean, if you were on set with Dario Argento, if you were on set with John Carpenter, would you be the guy who stood up and was like, really? Like, you want to do a CGI praying mantis? Like, or do you want to do a CGI like wolf? Dude, I'm not the guy who hates on CGI. You know, I will here and there. But I've talked about that enough. I'm not going to reiterate it. The CGI in this is definitely the worst modern CGI I've seen, especially in something that's got a director of that caliber's name attached to it. Like there's one scene where there's like a wolf or something. I think it's like maybe even like a werewolf or something like that. The CGI is so bad in that sequence. You're talking like PlayStation 1 graphics. Like I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I was like, why would anyone approve this? Why even show it on screen? Why even show it on screen? Like if you got that back from the special effects company that you hired to do it, whatever, you know, Mrs. Clinky's third grade class, whoever worked on that, you get that footage back and you go, okay, I mean, either we're gonna have to ask somebody else to do it, or we're just gonna have to cut this scene from the film and we're gonna have to edit around it. You don't show something like that on screen. You just don't do it. This is a guy who made Suspiria and Tenebrae, and I mean the list goes on and on. You guys know the fucking filmography of this guy. And to watch something like this, now I know he was in a decline in his later, you know, years of filmmaking. I know a lot of people don't like Giallo, they don't like The Card Player, and they don't like Do You Like Hitchcock, and so on and so forth. And I think I've seen all of those. And while they're not as good as Suspiria, Tenebrae, Inferno, whatever, they're not this bad. I mean, this is like a totally different level of bad. This is fucking laughable. This is like you make this movie for the Sci-Fi Channel and you never make a movie again. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand how Argento got this bad. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Joe requested this just to see me irate and trash this movie. Or maybe not. Maybe he really likes it and he's going to be like, I don't know, man. I found this and that to be cool. And that's great, man. If you could find something. I mean, what could I find likable in this movie? I mean, there's a couple sequences, I suppose. Okay, let's go in order. So we got Rutger Hauer in this. We've also got Thomas Kercherman, whatever his name is. I've seen him in so many things. And then the lovely, wonderful Asha Argento. Always good to see her. We get a opening fake friend high-pitched music scare. So fuck off with that right out the gate, Dario Argento. You're better than that. You're way better than that, dude. Come on. A fake fucking friend scare with loud music? that's unacceptable. Not from fucking Argento, man. Not from Argento. But then we cut into the most amazing pair of tits I've seen on screen in a little while. Oh, that's not true. I just watched The Howling last night, and those were amazing as well. They were great tits. That's it. Moving on. And oh my god. I like how when they're having sex, so the blonde chick with the nice tits is fucking this guy who ends up being married, and he like leaves her behind to die. What a piece of shit. But I mean, that's what you get for nailing some taken man in a barn or something. I mean, he's not going to be the greatest of guys. He's not going to be much of a stand-up guy. He's more of a lay-down kind of guy. And the laying down that they're doing together, so she has her leg like under him, and his leg is over her, and he's like going in, and he's so far from her. It's like the fucking scene in The Disaster Artist when they're like, "You're fucking her belly button. Like, what are you doing?" This is that. I was looking at it like, okay, has anyone on set ever had sex before? Because that angle in which they're at is impossible. Unless the guy's dick is like this long and it's curved in some way. No, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work. So I just laughed. It's like, I think in a movie like this, that's like adding insult to injury. You know what I mean? Like, if you're watching a great movie, things like that will happen, and you'll laugh, and it'll just kind of be a joke, right? And it'll just be like, oh my god, look at that sex, look at the angle he's going into her, it's impossible. And you wouldn't really mind. Like, let's say it was in Seven or Silence of the Lambs or something, this phenomenal film. Then you just be like, whatever, that's silly, that's a stupid moment, it's something to call back to with friends, you know, whatever. But in a movie like this, it just adds to your annoyance. It's just that moment in the film where you're like, they couldn't even get this right. Like, they couldn't even fucking get sex right. I mean, how hard is it to fucking film sex, dude? Come on. Guy gets on top, he gets close to the girl, and he fucking, you know, goes back and forth. It's not that complicated. Start fucking her belly button at an angle that's impossible. It's just like, it just pisses me off. It's just another thing where I'm just sitting there like, you can't even get that fucking right. So stupid. We get a good head split. There's a good gore scene where a guy gets hit and his head splits open. It was pretty cool. And I put the tits exclamation point, my God. There you go. That's a note that needed to be written. And I actually talked about the tits, amazing tits, earlier. So I had to do it twice. That's how incredible this girl's boobs were. Moving on. And he talked about all that. I already talked about all that. Jesus Christ, man. I don't know how long this review is going to be because I don't have a lot to say. I did write down here, and I agree with myself. Of course I agree. That this feels like a stage play. That's what it feels like. It feels like they're filming a stage play, and then they inserted like terrible CGI over it, and that the actors involved were all okay, like understudies that are probably not getting the gig anytime soon. Asha nude looks great, but dad. Those are my notes. Those are my notes. In case anyone ever wonders what I write down here. So I'm not going off of much, trust me. I do like where he puts the gun under the guy's fucking mouth and pulls the trigger, and his mouth is open. And then it goes in slow motion. You can see the bullet slowly going up through his chin and up in through his mouth. So you see the bullet in his mouth, and then it just like, starts up really quick again, and then blows the top of his head off. It's just blood, so it's not like a bunch of gore or anything. But the bullet through the mouth was cool. Like, that's a cool use of CGI. That actually looked good. So if you kept it to minimalistic stuff like that, I'd be like, oh, this is doable. I can do that. An hour and 10 minutes into the movie is when Van Helsing finally shows up. Rutger Hauer, and Rutger Hauer's Van Helsing in this just fucking lays waste to everybody and gets involved with. Like anybody he encounters, he's just like, they're like dead in 2 seconds. So he's pretty badass. And unfortunately, within 5 minutes of the movie, from him coming into the movie, within 5 minutes of that, he kills off both the fucking babes in the movie, Asha and the blonde chick. Like, he kills them in like, first 5 minutes of him being in the film. And I'm like, dude, that was literally the only thing that was keeping me interested were these girls. Because they just kept showing them nude. And I was just like, okay, I'm not getting tired of this anytime soon. Because this is the only fucking thing that makes me even want. This was such a chore to get through. I checked the time on this movie, I don't know, 10 times. I just kept looking. I was like, oh no. And it's not like an hour and 30 either. It's like an hour and 50, I think. And I was like, no. I could cut 20 minutes out of this movie. I could cut an hour and 50 out of this movie. No problem. The praying mantis, so he turns into like every fucking animal under the sun in this movie. It's like fucking Noah's Ark in this film, man. He's just like got a plethora of resources that he draws from. He's like, I'm gonna be a pony next. And like I was half expecting to see one. I was half expecting him. It was just gonna turn into a fucking zoo. He's just gonna keep chanting, like he was gonna be running at characters, and he was gonna be like a bear, then a lion, then a fucking, whatever. Is how many animals did he turn into in this movie? And all of them look like shit. All of them. Yeah. And then Mrs. Harker, she kills Dracula, and it's such a who gives a fuck moment. Like even Rucker Hours, Van Helsing is just kind of like, whatever, is this movie over yet? Like, can I get my shit and go? And then it like has this ending sequence where it shows Dracula's body, his like turned to ash, but then the ash reforms and it flies away. Like Dracula's still alive. Maybe we'll get a Dracula 2-3D. Please God, don't ever make that happen. Oh my God, this is such a fucking decline. This is such a bad movie. If this wasn't Argento, would I hate this movie as much? Would I think it was as bad? Yes, I suppose. I don't know. That's hard. Because I do expect more. I wouldn't be as upset. I would still think it sucked as bad, but I wouldn't be as upset. There, that's the way to put it. So, Joe, 17 minutes. It's not too bad. I know some of these can last 45 minutes or something, but dude, there's fucking nothing to talk about in this film. The dialogue drags and drags and drags, and I'm just sitting there like, I don't give a fuck. The romance or the seduction or Dracula being able to control people and all that, like, and even Van Helsing's entrance into the film and his character, and then the stuff between Asha and Mrs. the Harker wife, and all that stuff. When I don't give a fuck. I don't care at all. You know why? Is because, as I said, Dracula is a character that's been done so many times. We've seen the Bela Lugosi version. We've seen the fucking Gary Oldman version. We've seen Christopher Lee's version 15, 20 times now. We've seen so many different versions of Dracula at this point. I've seen Dracula Untold. I've seen, oh my God, there's so many fucking films. Dracula Dead Loving It, for fuck's sake, whatever. But so many of them tell this story. This fucking story. So even like, the old Hammer ones with Christopher Lee, or even when he did Prince Dracula or whatever, or Count Dracula, sorry. I'm thinking of Dracula, Prince of Darkness. That's another Hammer, the third one, if I remember correctly. Anyway, but I'm trying to remember, no, what's the fucking first one called? Jesus, man, it's been a while since I watched the Hammers. I wish I started the channel a long time ago. I wish I would have started the channel 5-10 years ago, because there's so many films that I've already watched, entire franchises, hundreds, thousands of films that I could have covered on the channel already. That now I have to go back and rewatch all the Hammer movies, all the Frankensteins, all the Draculas, all the mummies. It's like 7 Draculas and 8 Frankensteins and 3 mummies, and it's just, there's so many, and I've seen them all. But yeah, it's such a bummer that I started this so late. But But whatever. I started it when I started it, and here we are with you lovely motherfuckers, and we get to talk about this shitty ass movie because Joe is awesome, and he donated to the Patreon, and he's been a patron of mine for a while. This ain't no new patron, and he came to me after like a year or something of being a patron, and it's like, hey man, can I get another movie? And I'm like, dude, you've been a fucking patron that long. You absolutely can. And let me tell you guys, I wish I could have my Patreon set up to where I could fucking give you a review every single month. And I know it seems like that should be fair, but essentially the Patreon is there to support the channel, and you know, kind of out the gate you get a review, and that's cool, and you can keep supporting and maybe even drop it down a little bit if it's too high for you. But I can't give everyone a review every month. It's just not possible. I have 30 something fucking reviews. I've mentioned this before, but I'm bringing this up because I've gotten asked a few times recently. And with someone like this who's been a patron for over a fucking year, of course I'm going to give him another one. It's like, dude, you've definitely paid enough for it. But someone who, you know, is paying $5 a month, and not that they're not awesome for doing that, they are, but there's just no feasible way that I could get to every single person's. I mean, it's not possible. But you know, every once in a while, absolutely. But I appreciate this, man, for real. Even though I hate this movie, I think it's trash. But if you love it, if this is why you requested it, great, awesome. I'm glad someone found enjoyment in this outside of the tits. And maybe a couple, like some guy gets his head knocked off and shit. Like, there's like, as I always say, I could cherry pick a couple things, but this movie has very, very few cherries. There's very little to pick from, man. So yeah. All right, Joe. Thank you for the Patreon donations, and I'm not thanking you for picking this movie, but I did it, and I actually started recording this last night, and my camera fucking shut off right in the middle of it, so I have to do this review twice. All right, adios, man.